A tiny island nation in the Pacific Ocean actually experimented with the ANC style of black economic empowerment for more than 25 years. But because it was such an utter disaster in their country, they wrote up a brand new constitution in 2013 to get rid of it forever and ever, to finally set the era of institutional racism behind them. Fiji embraced race-based politics to the extent that ethnic tensions emerged that slowly transformed this tropical island paradise into one of the most racially divided and violent societies in the entire Pacific Ocean. For decades, Fiji had operated with a system that in many ways resembled South Africa's infamous Black Economic Empowerment dispensation. You see, following a coup d'etat in the country in the late 80s, political and economic preferences were legally established for the Itaiki Fijians, the Polynesian ethnic group, which makes up around 62% of Fiji's population. And this is against the Indo-Fijian ethnic group, which makes up around a third of the people of this country. Polynesian Fijians, these are the ethnic group widely known as Fijians around the world, in particular because of their achievements on the rugby field. They are also known as the Maori people, who were guaranteed political dominance, and affirmative action programs prioritize their scholarships, public sector employment, business licenses, and economic development programs, just like it is happening in South Africa with the black people here. But this program ended abruptly just over a decade ago when another political coup d'etat completely reshaped the country's policies, leading to a complete constitutional overhaul. Stay tuned, because in today's video we are going to tell you everything about the rise and fall of black economic empowerment in Fiji and why the Fijians not just decided but realized that this system can never work in any country and can be a lesson for South Africa. 1,000 years ago, Fiji formed part of the ancient Tongan Empire, which really wasn't an empire at all in the sense that we tend to think about it in Western terms. You see, the Tongan Empire did not occupy much land at all, but was mostly a maritime empire spread across a lot of tiny islands and sea routes throughout Polynesia. The very first European to set foot on the Fijian islands was the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman, who arrived in the islands in 1643, interestingly around the very same time that Jan van Riebeeck set foot in South Africa. For 2 centuries, Europeans then sporadically visited these islands, which became known as the Cannibal Islands, because, of course, of the ritual cannibalism that was practiced in these parts of the world, also Fiji, before large-scale Christianization came from British colonization of these islands. When the British Empire initially annexed Fiji, among many other surrounding islands in 1874, the islands were, of course, overwhelmingly inhabited by the indigenous Itaukai Fijians. But the British colonial authorities soon transformed the demographic structure of the country entirely. You see, what happened was between 1879 and 1916, more than 60,000 Indian slaves from India were brought into Fiji to work primarily on the sugar plantations, exactly as it happened in South Africa. This is strikingly similar to what happened around the very same time in Natal, in the east of what would later become known as the entity of South Africa. In South Africa, here 2 Indian slaves were brought in by the British to work on sugar plantations around Durban, to the north of Durban, and also the coastal belt going up the north coast of KwaZulu-Natal of today. And between 1860 and 1911, roughly 150,000 Indians arrived in Natal under indentured contracts from the British Empire. Fiji remained under British rule for almost 100 years until finally in April 1970, Fiji gained its independence from Great Britain, a mere 9 years after South Africa gained its independence from Great Britain. For nearly 2 decades after independence, Fiji was governed by the Conservative Alliance Party under the leadership of Ratu Sir Kamisese Mara. The political system was carefully structured to maintain a fragile ethnic balance through communal voting rolls and power-sharing arrangements between the indigenous Fijians or Polynesian Fijians and the Indo-Fijians, who were the descendants of the Indian slaves that were brought there by the British. But yet, despite this constitutional balancing act, Fiji remained a deeply divided society between the surface, with politics, economics and identity increasingly shaped by racial tensions between these two different races. Then came the 1987 election. An alliance between the Fiji Labour Party and the National Federation Party caused a major upset which would permanently change Fiji's political landscape. This alliance managed to win 28 seats in the Fijian House of Representatives, 2 more than the majority. The new Prime Minister, Timiko Bavadra, was himself an indigenous Fijian Polynesian. His coalition depended heavily on Indo-Fijian support, and his entire cabinet was now made up almost exclusively by Indo-Fijians. For the very first time in Fiji's history, these people who arrived on the island as slaves from India imported slaves, now took control of the country's politics. The Polynesian Fijians interpreted this as a political takeover of their own country. To them, this shift represented a foreign people taking over their country. And so, less than a month after the election on 14 May 1987, Lieutenant Colonel Sitiveni Rabuka entered parliament with a bunch of armed soldiers and overthrew the democratically elected government. Rabuka justified the coup as necessary to prevent indigenous Fijians from becoming politically marginalized in their own country. The coup shocked the world because until that moment Fiji had been marketed internationally by the mainstream media as this extremely peaceful tropical paradise democracy. Yet, beneath that very false image, racial tensions had been building up for generations. The coup also brought about a radical transformation of Fijian politics, as the country abolished the monarchy and severed constitutional ties with Britain altogether. This meant that it effectively removed Queen Elizabeth II as head of state and formally declared itself a sovereign republic. The new constitution of Fiji, accepted in 1990, expressly reserved parliament by race, and the state increasingly institutionalized ethnic preference as official government policy. Separate electoral rolls were established for each racial group, and the government sponsored programs favoring Italki Fijians in school and university scholarships, public sector employment, commercial licensing, state contracts and business financing. Although most of the land had already belonged to the Polynesians there, Indo-Fijians were now also prohibited from owning more than 13% of Fiji's agricultural land. While much less severe, of course, these policies in many ways strikingly resemble the Black Economic Empowerment Law in South Africa, and land policies that we come to know so very well here, which also severely infringe upon the rights of ethno-racial minorities by severely limiting the participation of these minorities in the economy through racially discriminatory policies that completely shut them out of the economy. But our story today does end well, because in 2013, Fiji finally put this destructive Black economic empowerment experiment behind them. And ironically, this change was once again the result of another coup d'etat. In December 2006, Commodore Frank Bainimarama overthrew the elected government of Prime Minister Laisenia Karase. But unlike the 1987 coup, which had largely been justified in the name of protecting indigenous political supremacy, Bainimarama claimed he was overthrowing Fiji's ethnically divisive and race-based political order or dispensation itself. And so following decades of political instability, racial engineering and ethnic voting blocks and systems, affirmative action programs and recurring instability, Fiji finally decided that the organized political order had become unsustainable. When Fiji adopted a new constitution in 2013, the new constitution formally rejected race-based political organization and made all forms of affirmative action policies illegal and unconstitutional. And so Fiji finally moved away from openly institutionalized racial preference as its organizing political principle, something South Africa is yet to do. In this regard, what Fiji has accomplished by means of establishing a new constitutional order a little over a decade ago provides a perfect example for South Africa, a country that sadly remains trapped in a racially discriminatory system. BEE judges applicants not based on merit, but on their basis of race, giving black people access to jobs and contracts and ownership targets in the private sector and promotion opportunities that whites are categorically excluded from. But as the international pressure on Cyril Ramaphosa's government mounts, we at the Willem Petzer Group believe that South Africa's black economic empowerment may very soon follow the fate of Fiji's. We specifically explained how this will happen in a recent video, which you can check out by clicking on this link appearing on your screen right now. And please do consider supporting the work that we are doing here by becoming a paying member of the Willem Petzer Group. Invest in us by simply following the easy steps on this banner and help us pay our researchers' salaries so that we can continue producing content like this every single day. Goodbye and God bless.